Here I am after so many years, hounded by hatred, trapped by fear. I'm in a box. I've got no place to go. If I follow my mind, I know I slaughter my own. Help me, I'm a prisoner. Won't you hear my plea? I need somebody, yeah, to listen to me. I beg you, brothers and sisters, I'm counting on you, yeah. Black babies in the womb, shackled and bound, chained by the caveman who keeps beauty down, smacked on the ass when they're swollen and wet. And to a spineless man who never forgets, never forgets that he's a prisoner. Can't you hear my plea? 'Cause I need somebody, Lord knows, to listen to me. I'm a stranger to my son who wonders why his daddy runs. Yeah.
Greetings once again. Welcome to the Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition podcast. I'm Brother Frank and I'm with former political prisoner.
Islam.
Today's episode we focus on what truly America is. We know that the 4th of, as Brother Abdul Haq says, 4th of July is coming up. So we are dedicating this episode to really get into the history of America and how that relates to the political prisoner. Because if you're talking about America and what it is and the struggle that the political prisoner had or anyone had who is trying to uh, stand up for issues that are correct, then you understand the sacrifice of a political prisoner. You understand the reason why we commit ourselves to doing an episode a week, usually on a Wednesday at noon, so we can create an audience that's going to understand the importance of the political prisoner and the urgency in which this work needs to be done because our political prisoners are up there in age and they're getting closer and closer to making a transition or what we call death. And we don't want that tragedy to take place on our watch, meaning that a political prisoner has died in prison. That's why behind us is the line that we care so deeply about, which is don't let U.S. held political prisoners die in prison, because we are living in the United States and we have a very powerful, strong history of being resilient when it comes to fighting for what we want. When we look at what's coming up, the 4th of July, we look at the first political prisoners. When you're talking about the creation of the United States, you're talking about the indigenous people who resisted, right? They were in prison if they weren't killed. And you look at the African who was stolen from Africa and brought here, and some of them resisted, and they were captured, and they were political prisoners because their idea of what was correct was to not be a slave, to live out their lives as Africans. And they resisted, and their resistance was met with um, stiff, stiff persecution from the oppressor, the so-called slave master, and they were imprisoned. And that history must be looked at seriously because you fast forward to 2022, you look at those who are currently incarcerated, who are pictured on the wall, and even some who were not on the wall. Unfortunately, we didn't put everybody up there, and we have to take some criticism to that because we don't want to forget nobody. But in our introduction, we showed a number of political prisoners, and because we don't want to forget nobody. But
Yeah, peace and love, all power to the people. In this war, the truth is our most powerful weapon. The enemy has vast propaganda networks, that is well financed, but in spite of all that, in spite of their colonialized education, through controlling the schools and all that, by us speaking the truth, we are going to win, and the truth is that America, was founded on atrocities, on mass murders, crimes, greed, some of the worst suffering in world history has come about through empires, in their outreach for greed. Various thinkers have equated that with Satanism, the greed of the Satan, the barbarity, the cruelty, the heartlessness, and history is full of this, So we tell the truth, and we're going to win because the truth is more powerful than all the money, all the wealth that these folks have to propagate their lives. You know, we're going to have a film a little bit later on to talk about some of the atrocities that the enemy has perpetuated throughout the world. You know, but first I want to read something from Howard Zinn, Education on Racial Atrocities. All right, now every time I try to do this, this other stuff come up, brother. Let's move out your bang out the way. All right. Okay, I'm getting this coming up. So Howard Zinn put together some essays, you understand, and you know the essence of what he's saying is that the atrocities and the violence committed by America was done for the cause of white supremacy. So I'm pulling it up right now. You know, I'm sorry about that. You know, sometimes I got this new phone and all this junk, this pop-up stuff comes up. You know,
the people appreciate the effort, brother. So
yes,
you know they're patient with us. We've been consistent.
Yeah, people know what happens with this technology. But anyhow, like I said, here's from Howard Zinn a list of some atrocities committed in America in the name of white supremacy. You know, and our political prisoners are among those who have fought against these evils. You know, so we got to correctly identify our interests and correctly identify the truth in history and tell that truth. You understand? So that you know we will rise and prosper as a people. Okay, so I'm gonna read some of these, and also there's a film that we have ready to show that talks about some atrocities around the world that America's.
Yeah, just let me know when you want the people to see it, so I can pull it up.
May 26, 1637, the Pequot Massacre. Hundreds of Pequot villagers were massacred by the Puritans in Mystic, Connecticut. The Puritans, they said they was pure and holy. All right, right on, you know. Okay. July 27, 1816, a fort on the Appalachian River in Florida was firebombed by the U.S. Army. August 6, 1855, the Bloody Monday, on Election Day in Louisville, Kentucky, Protestant mobs attacked German and Irish Catholic neighbors. Them was religious people, okay, so-called. July 13, 1863, New York City draft riots and massacre. The New York City draft massacre riots were the largest civil insurrection in U.S. history besides the Civil War itself. White mobs attacked the African American community, committing murder and burning homes and institutions, including an orphanage. You know, so they always talk about, you know, we have all these rights to vote and everything like that. So you can see that these things were only acquired through struggle against the system, not because of the system. You know, this system, the white supremacy and racism, you understand, organized mobs, you understand, to prevent us from having these rights. November 29, 1864, Sand Creek Massacre. A Colorado cavalry unit, on orders from Colorado's governor and ignoring a surrender flag, brutally attacked Cheyenne Aropia tribes. White abolitionists. Silas Soule was assassinated for reporting on the event. Okay, so just like Julian Assange reported on war crimes that these people have committed, now they try to put him in jail for the rest of his life.
Right. There's consequences for resistance.
Yeah, for telling the truth.
Right.
April 12, 1864, Union soldiers massacred at Fort Pillow. Confederate troops massacred over 500 surrendering Union soldiers, majority African American, in the Civil War Battle of Fort Pillow. Okay, so you see a history of racism, you know, and that's what we're still fighting against. December 9th, 1864, Ebenezer Creek Massacre. People who had escaped from slavery and were following the Union Army were blocked from crossing the Ebenezer Creek, leading to their death. May 1st, 1866, Memphis Massacre. White civilians and police killed 40 6 African Americans and injured many more while burning houses, schools, and churches in Memphis. All right, these are these good Americans, they're always talking about how much morals and ideals they got, but you see, this is what they was founded on.
Teach, brother, teach.
July 30th, 1866, the New Orleans massacre occurred. White residents attacked black marchers near the Louisiana Constitutional Convention. September 19th, 1868, as African Americans marched peacefully in response to the expulsion from elected office, more than a dozen were massacred near Albany, Georgia. October 25th, 1868, St. Bernard Parish massacre. The St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana massacre of African Americans was carried out by white men to terrorize the recently emancipated slaves. The Ku Klux Klan went nuts, lost their minds shortly after emancipation. That's when the Ku Klux Klan came into existence, hated the freedom of black people. These folks, they love the word freedom, equality, justice. They love them words to say out their mouths, but the history of their actions show the opposite. Opelousas Massacre. In response to the promotion of voter registration, the KKK group massacred hundreds of people, most of whom were African Americans. October 24th, 1871, the Los Angeles Chinatown Massacre, a lynch mob of 500 Anglo and Latino Los Angeles rioted and murdered at least 18 Chinese residents after a white civilian died in a shootout. December 28th, 1872, the Yapalali people shelter of Skeleton Cave in Arizona was attacked by the U.S. Army trying to force them to reservations. April 13th, 1873, Colfax Massacre. The KKK carried out the Colfax Massacre in response to a Republican victory in the 1872 election. Remember, the Republicans back in them days was, the so-called good guys, and the KKK, they was Democrats, all right, back in them days, so they didn't change that stuff around now. November 3rd, 1874, White League attacked black voters. Deadly election riots took place in Barber County, Alabama, against African American politicians and voters. All right, people trying to get the right to vote. All right, which they're trying to take away nowadays. You see that the right wing is coming at the right to vote cross country. That's one of the
right. I had an experience. Right, I had an experience yesterday that made me feel a certain type of way. I go to this place to vote, and they tell me that I'm not supposed to be there. So they send me to another place, and the other place tells me the same thing. And so now I've been going to this one place for the last couple of years, and I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to go back into my own understanding of history and how people of African descent were they try to persuade us not to vote, right? And say, okay, you have to have this, that, and third, and then you have to answer these questions. If not, then you can't vote. So now I was starting to recite that history to them and said, this is making me feel uncomfortable. I might have to make a report about some fraudulent activities happening.
Sure sounds like fraud to me, brother.
And now all of a sudden they get me what I need to get done and make sure that I vote. But we have to understand, don't ever take our history for granted. There's power in a historical reference, and I think that's when you're laying out what you're laying out. We need to direct that directly to political prisoners and understand, their position and why it's so important for us to struggle for freedom.
Because they fought for the reality of freedom, justice, and equality on the real side. These folks, they
say that again, brother. That's a strong point.
They fought for the reality of freedom, justice, and equality. These folks parrot, if you understand, but a parrot be making noise and don't even know what he's saying. You understand? That's what a parrot do, and that's what the enemy does.
Yeah, regurgitate.
They just talk this stuff, but they don't live it. And the history here is showing that the evidence is in history. September 4th, 1875, Clinton, Mississippi massacre. Nearly 50 African Americans were killed by white mobs during the Clinton riot. July 8th, 1876, Hamburg massacre. A black militia was accused of blocking a road and punished with the Hamburg massacre. This was the Reconstruction era voter suppression. God, pop-up stuff come up again.
Just proceed, brother.
All right. So I'm trying to get this, this new device. I'm trying to, read this information to you, and some pop-up stuff has come on the new device. But anyway, we got a video prepared to go to talk about the U.S. atrocities around the world.
You want me to show the video now, brother?
Yeah, in 1 second. I'm going to explain, what's in it. Like in the Middle East, shortly after 9/11, there was a gathering of U.S. politicians, and Wolfowitz came with the idea, let's attack Iraq for what happened in Afghanistan, and everybody just scratching their head. Saddam Hussein ain't got nothing to do with Al Qaeda. What are you talking about? So he kept on trying to convince them that they needed to attack Iraq. So later on, Wolfowitz caught George Bush, a former oil man, by the fight. Said, look, man, let me tell you something. They got concentrations of people in northern Iraq and southern Iraq. There's vast oil reserves. So Bush said, oh, okay, now I understand what you're talking about. So they attacked Iraq and knowing that Saddam Hussein had no weapons of mass destruction, and they killed 1 million people, Wow. It's going to be more details of that in the video coming up. All right, the attack on the Philippines. In the Philippines, the U.S. seeking hegemony in the Pacific area, you understand, attacked the Philippines and killed 20,000 soldiers, and between 200,000 and 300,000 people died in concentration camps of hunger, disease, and being attacked. Okay, during World War II, during Vietnam, they had the My Lai massacre, where they walked to the village of My Lai, and they should just kill everything: men, women, children, babies, everybody. Okay, that was the U.S. war.
The scorched earth policy,
right? Right, and in Vietnam, they're trying to say that in Vietnam, they're trying to stop the spread of socialism, and they went there for no reason whatsoever, and murdered 1.5 million people. Okay, World War II, they dropped a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and murdered 250,000 people. You understand? And at the time, the president of the U.S. had a letter in his hand saying that Japan wanted to surrender to Russia. But they didn't want Japan to surrender to Russia because America wanted, global domination, wanted to take over the world order. You understand? So they had Japan to surrender to America, and through the U.S. now, so-called rebuilding in Europe. This is how the U.S. acquired the wealth and the finance to become the leader of the world order. So, brother, you can put on that. That video has more information about U.S. atrocities around the world.
One 135 years after the iconic Statue of Liberty was sent to New York City, a new Lady Liberty is on its way to the United States of America. But has the US renewed its vows with liberty, democracy, and freedom, benchmark for the so-called free world. Soon after the Statue of Liberty was sent in 1886, Spain ceded the Philippines to the US. Seeking colonialism, the US was faced with a Filipino independence struggle. According to the US State Department, the US killed more than 20,000 Filipino combatants, and more than 200,000 Filipino civilians were killed in US concentration camps as a result of violence, famine, and disease. Despite the US playing a vital role in defeating Nazi Germany, declassified documents have revealed many of the US's scandalous dealings with the Third Reich. This includes direct collaboration from the American company IBM and its founder, Thomas Watson, that stretched into the war years. According to a Guardian investigation, George Bush's grandfather, US Senator Prescott Bush, was also a director and shareholder of companies that profited from their involvement with Nazi Germany. And finally, US government officials, in collaboration with the CIA, actively recruited and worked with known Nazi war criminals, such as fascist ideologue Emil Augsburg, who was employed in the US's crusade against Soviet. Despite the overwhelming victory of the Allied powers in the Second World War, detonated 2 nuclear Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, killing more than 200 in the Dominican Republic. During the Cold War era, the US reached its peak of foreign tampering and interventions, including the 1953 CIA-backed coup in Iran against socialist leader Mohammad Mossadegh to reinstall the autocratic Shah of Iran, and the 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion against Cuba's Castro, in addition to 638 attempts to assassinate the revolutionary leader. According to a report published in the New York Times, the US led at least 81 overt and covert known interventions in foreign elections during the period 1946 to 2000. The US's fight against communism meant that the US committed its armed forces extensively in several proxy wars, such as those fought in Vietnam and Korea. The US involvement in Vietnam cost the lives of some 365,000 civilians. This includes massacres committed by US troops against unarmed civilians, such as the My Lai massacre. Vietnam has stated that 2 million civilians on both sides and some 1.1 million North Vietnamese and Viet Cong fighters were killed. The US extensively used chemical warfare during this period. A US program, codenamed Operation Ranch Hand, sprayed 20 million gallons of various herbicides over Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos from 1961 to 1971. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York City, the US launched another crusade, this time against Iraq and Afghanistan. It lied and claimed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. It didn't. The US invaded anyway, resulting in the death of more than 1 million Iraqis in the ensuing invasion, insurgencies, and civil wars. The US practice of torture, rape, and other war crimes in Abu Ghraib prison were also exposed. The US's protracted chaos in the Middle East gave rise to groups such as Daesh, their reign of terror across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. This is not to mention the US's own active torture and detention base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and its global rendition program. The US war in Afghanistan in 2001 resulted in the death of more than 240,000 people in Pakistan and Afghanistan, including more than 70,000 civilians. But is this all really a surprise in a country that was built upon slavery and the genocide of its own native indigenous population? As a UN Secretary General once said, there is no difference between diplomacy and deception. And so, if the Statue of Liberty is supposed to represent the US's outlook to the world, it is arguably a deception not only to the world, but more importantly, to its own people.
The last poet said the Statue of Liberty is a prostitute.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. An explosive testimony of former White House aide accused Donald Trump of attacking his own presidential security detail on January 6th after the Secret Service refused to drive him to the Capitol gathering to block Congress from counting electoral.
So there you have it.
We're back.
Yes, a sharp evaluation of the history of the United States. And I think when you look at every example historically of the United States and how it has committed a number of human rights violations, then we have to ask ourselves what's going on and why do we continue to have political prisoners? Why are political prisoners continuing to be neglected in their current state? And we have to that has to resonate with us, and we have to commit ourselves to bringing them home. I think that everybody can do something. We want people to donate $1. Just donate $1. We gave you the Cash App. The Cash App is Sefus and Kofa. That dollar can be put to use for this work because we have to do this work because our political prisoners can't die in prison. Brother, explain how far $1 can go.
Well, I mean, the dollars multiplied, when it's going to a righteous cause, and not just wasted, going to the hands of some capitalist. When a dollar is spent in the cause of justice and righteousness, it is well spent. We need to be financed, and freedom ain't free. So. It's very, very important that we support our people, through our contributions, because they need to be free, you understand, because part of that struggle is the economic enhancement and nation building black economics. So, it all comes back, it's like karma. It comes back. You cast your bread upon the water and come back to you.
Absolutely, brothers. Well said, well said. Before we close out, because I think we coming to an end, I just want to let the people of Queensbridge know that tomorrow at 6 p.m. is going to be a program in Queensbridge at the community center, at the community capacity development. I have the address shown. For those who can't see, this address is the community capacity development is 10-31 41st Avenue. That's Long Island City. That's the community of Queensbridge that had opened up their arms to us a number of times. So that's tomorrow, 6 p.m. That's the community capacity development. The address is 1031 41st Avenue. Please share this episode with 10 people. Please consider seriously donating $1. We calling for $1 donation from viewers so that we can use that for posters. We can use that for palm cards so we can start carrying this message of freeing our political prisoners and not letting our political prisoners die in prison to as many people as possible. We know this podcast has to carry on, so that's why we're asking people to share it with 10 people. Brother, before we close out, you have something that you want
to say?
Yeah,
I just wanted, something I was trying to give to the people before. I got this new device, and it'd be messing up. I had this information I was reading, and it just disappeared off the screen. I got it back. So I'm gonna read a couple more things real quick. But I want to say also, they talked about the U.S. one of their favorite terms and put in the media is terrorism. But as you can see by the presentation we gave, that which put the hatred in the hearts of people that made them commit terrorist acts. You can see what caused it. Literally, what they have done to people, the violence that they put on people. You understand? To steal the natural resources has literally created insanity in the brains of people. I don't mean figuratively. I mean literally. People are insane. You understand? Yeah. And commit these terrorist acts. But you can see what put that hatred, that rage in them. Y'all just saw that on the screen.
Right. And we have to make that distinction between a terrorist and a freedom fighter.
The Americans are the real terrorists.
So our freedom fighters are, our political prisoners.
Right. Right. And various statements by people who engage in those type of acts, they said the reason why they do that was 500,000 babies that America murdered for oil. You understand? This is the reason they give for the things they carry out. I'm not saying that that's stuff that is right for them to do that, but the U.S. says they're going around the world to make it safe for America.
Right.
They're making it dangerous for America.
And explain the terrorist act.
Mm-hmm.
A terrorist act. A terrorist is just going to blow up a building and kill a whole bunch of innocent people, and saying that this is an act because they want to invoke some type of fear of people. Mm-hmm. And I think that when a freedom fighter is saying, I'm organizing people and I am going to act in their interest to be able to be self-determined, mm-hmm. and we have the right to have food, clothing, and shelter, adequate food, clothing, and shelter, that is. And I'm going to commit myself to being organized. I'm going to commit myself to an organization. We're going to have a clear political agenda, and that's going to be provided for anybody who has an interest in moving us forward. So it's clear, it's on the table, and it says to people that you have the right to stand up for justice. You have a right not to accept your oppression. You have the right to be self-determination. Self-determination is the right to exist, and we have the right to exist on our own terms. And that's clear politically. That's why every time we present the episodes, we give you the 10-point program that the Panthers had. We give you the objective of the Northeast Political Prison Coalition, and because we want you to be very clear on why we are committed to this podcast and why we continue to advocate for the freedom of our political prisoners.
Oh yeah, I just want to mention a couple more things. Also, we got the Wounded Knee Massacre. Okay, what happened on December 29, 1890, a Lakota encampment on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation was attacked by the U.S. Army, and close to 300 Native Americans were murdered near Wounded Knee Creek in South Dakota. Beginning on February 27, 1973, 83 years later, Wounded Knee was the site of a 71-day standoff between the American Indian movement and the federal law enforcement officials. We remember a poster by Bruce Carter and archived at the Library of Congress. All right. And I want to mention the massacre of Black Wall Street.
Yes.
Remember that was another.
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That was the Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1929. That was a big one in the history, of the evil history of the United States of America. A thriving Black community. You understand? These people couldn't stand to see Black people doing well. You understand?
Yes.
And they murdered hundreds of our people. Black Wall Street. And this is the type of thing that activists in the Black community, must bring about economic empowerment again. So, you said the value of the dollars going to a good cause. There it is, right on. Before we go, I want to mention a couple of our political prisoners. I looked up Larry Hoover and Jeff Fort, now known as Imam Malik, and both of these brothers are working on peace in the hood.
Yes.
These were the leaders of two of the biggest gangs in the U.S., in Chicago, the Blackstone Rangers and the Black Gangster Disciples. That was Hoover, Blackstone Rangers, Jeff Fort. And right now, both of these leaders are calling, for the youth in the street, to cool it, to come with the peace, to come with the unity, come with the love, And I mentioned before, I'll mention again, that you can watch a documentary that gives information of an initiative by Jeff Fort's daughter, in Chicago. Interrupters, a singing group gonna come up. Interrupters, the movie that talks about a successful campaign in Chicago to stop the killing, which has turned the lives around of many, many people. Just Amina Matthews, you understand? And look that up, So, I wanted to, every time we do an episode, I want to mention certain political prisoners and give some information about them. I had some stuff I was going to read, but it took me time to look it up again because I got this new device and it be acting a fool.
No problem,
but,
brother. You do what you can with what you have.
Yeah. But indeed, these are the type of individuals who have much respect among the young people in our communities, and they will listen like this. Well, it's other type of people that they wouldn't listen to, who they would just egg, in the words of the street, ignore. Egg mean ignore. They would just egg certain other leaders. Yes. But these are the type of brothers who have influence, who they would listen to, So this is another argument of why they need to be free.
Yes, and one of the things that we did not mention when we did the history of the United States and their violations of our human rights is COINTELPRO, right? That's a part of their history, and that's their direct attack on organizations like the Black Panther Party. And we can't forget about COINTELPRO. Yeah. That was by the state, and that was to attack our freedom fighters. And our brothers and sisters who made a commitment to moving people of African descent forward, and working class people as well, because they had solidarity with a number of organizations. And solidarity is very important. It's powerful because you can't do everything on your own. Nothing lives or exists in the universe independent of itself. Everything needs to rely on something else, and that is why that's very important. Or have solidarity with other organizations who have similar motives to yours. And I think that, we want to really identify COINTELPRO in the content of historical analysis of the United States. So I think that everything has been said. We want you to donate $1, hit like, please share with at least 10 people. And, we're going to be out here again next week to remain committed to that. And anything else before we go, brother? Because we're gonna hit them with Killer Mike as we always do.
No, just look up the history of COINTELPRO. Every time that our people get a little freedom, a little dignity, these folks catch rabies in their head. So that's what COINTELPRO was. Just like after emancipation, the racists in America went nuts and formed the Ku Klux Klan, So it's the same mentality, you understand? And it's in our interest to know what COINTELPRO is and moves like that, you understand? And for us to be on the right side, is on the side of what our interests are. Our liberation is our interest, So those who fight for our liberation must be liberated. Black power, free them all.
Free them all. All right, and as we always do, we're going to hit you with our closing remarks from our brother, Killer Mike. And this is always a powerful piece because it says what we need to say.
As well, and I have to give the credit to this idea of Miss Kathy Hughes of Radio 1. She's like, Michael, it's time that you guys organize a fund to set aside to help people who sacrifice for our freedom. Meaning, every time something happens, I hear this. Why don't the gang bangers jump up and do something for us? Why don't you kill them? You kill each other. And I say to myself, when is the last time you sent money to Assata Shakur? When is the last time you sent money to Matulu Shakur? When is the last time you sent money to Mumia Abu-Jamal or Larry Hoover or Jeff Ford or Leonard Peltier? When is the last time you have made it your business to send money to a revolutionary or a hoodlum that has helped us? And until we start to do that, how can we ask these young men to be warriors? Because if they do it in the name of the hood, at least the hood gonna honor their name always. At least the hood gonna make sure at least their children got something or their mama's house is looked after. As a community, if we're going to ask people to bungee jump for us with no cord, be prepared to take care of them when they get a life sentence. Be prepared to look after their family. See, I don't mind the work getting done. but let's take care of the workers. Let's stop asking more out of people than we would do for ourselves. So what I'd like to see, my dream thing, is to see 1 million people from the culture dedicate $10 a month. That's $10 million a month, $120 million a year toward taking care of civil rights leaders who have worked on our behalf and are elderly now and don't have to take care of themselves, like Rosa Parks, whose rent was paid by the owner of Little Caesars Pizza. We should have had a fund to make sure that she never had to worry about that again in her life. We should have a fund that makes sure money makes it to Assata Shakur, and Mutulu Shakur has legal representation and food, and Leonard Peltier, who has diabetes in jail, can get insulin taken care of. And until we start doing it, $10 a month is about what you pay on a couple fast food restaurant visits. So if 1 million of us do that for the rest of our life, look at how well we'll be taking care of the people that we're asking to sacrifice on our behalf.
I agree. And recently,
Yeah, quick before we leave, we just want to say everybody needs to check on what they can do for Mutulu Shakur. Check out the community page, Facebook, or go to freematulu.com, or just go on any search engine and look for any campaigns to free Mutulu. Do your part, because we got to bring that brother home. Just like the sign said behind us, we can't let our political prisoners die in prison. So, what's the call?
Free 'em all.
What's the call?
Free 'em all.
What's the call?
Free 'em all.